The issue of inclusivity in our economy has become a very big one. And many people talk about the fact that our economy doesn't quite reach its potential because there are not enough of us active in the economy. One of my favorite entrepreneurs is the founder of a company that you ladies will know well, and in fact now recently gentlemen will know well, and that is Sorbet. He started the company many years ago, sold it recently, and he has now started what he calls the Hatch Institute. I'm talking about Ian Fuhr, also a man who wrote one of my favorite books, Get That Feeling, about his experiences in a business. He's now bringing all those experiences into this institute, and joining me to talk more about it is the man himself. Welcome, my good sir. Good to see you. How are you?
I'm fine. Thank you, Andile. It's so good to be on your show.
Good to see you. Good to have you. Good to see you in good health. It is a tough time, I guess, right now. This thing is not only about, the restrictions of business and the economy. It's first a humanitarian issue.
Sure. It's huge at the moment, I must say, and it's impacting on everybody and everything at the moment.
Absolutely. Let's get started perhaps on talking about the journey, because if you read your book, you kind of get a good sense of that journey. But this journey has taken you kind of full circle about doing business in South Africa, which has inspired you to start this institute. So talk to me. What was the inspiration that got you to a point that says, I've done all of this in the past 40 years. I think it's time for me to create something that gives back.
So my lifelong entrepreneurial journey has been very largely about culture in business. I've always been very, very excited and stimulated by the importance of culture in business. And through my various entrepreneurial ventures, each business that I started and built up, I was always heavily focused on the people side of the business.
Yeah.
The culture. And so over the years, particularly in the area of race relations and diversity and inclusion, those are always very important things to me. And so with each passing business, I would focus on those and learn more and try and implement new ideas around that. And so by the time I had finished with Sorbet, or was about to start with Sorbet rather, I had built what I believe to be a comprehensive sort of culture blueprint, if you want to call it, for business, especially in the socio-political environment in which we are living. And that became an important thing. It wasn't just about culture in business, it was about how to be able to become a leader, what I call a culture-driven leader, in an environment which is much more complex than just the old traditional business leadership styles. Because now we're having to run companies in this highly complex South African socio-political landscape, which is not an easy thing to do, and it requires specific skills. And so that's where I felt there was an opportunity to try and help leaders. And I created the concept called cultureneering, which is essentially creating a culture of service in a diverse environment where people start to feel a sense of belonging, they feel a sense of purpose, and they feel included in the overall scheme of things. So when it came time to start Sorbet, I had this culture, and I felt that it wasn't so much about starting a business and then trying to develop a culture. It was more about, I had the culture, all I needed was a business to insert it in. So that's what I did. I went out looking for a business to try and help my culture process. And it just happened to be the beauty industry. And unfortunately, after some years, took a little while, I was able to implement that culture. And I'm very happy to say that it ultimately became our competitive advantage. And so when I sold Sorbet, I thought, well, this is now the perfect time to start helping other companies with this cultureneering.
You say that when you did more and more research in the beauty industry, just before you ventured into it, you said that white clients preferred white therapists, or at least everybody said so. And then, of course, your Kmart business, your grocery business, that started, your retail business rather, that started in 1976, which is a very unique year in the history of the country. So what in your journey kind of gave you the insights about racial dynamics in South Africa and how it impacts on business?
Yeah, well, look, I mean, at that stage, I was 22 years old in 1976, and I had just started this business with my older brother. There were just the two whites in this business, and I had come from a very privileged background, the typical white privilege. I went to a Jewish school, and everything was just sweet and rosy. And there I was then, I found myself 2 weeks after the uprising started, opening a business in the center of Johannesburg with all black staff and all black customers. So you can imagine it was a bit of a baptism of fire for me, but it opened my eyes from day one, and I realized that this was a different world completely to everything I had ever known in my entire life. And so I was fortunate that I had the opportunity to learn from black people, because I mean, it wasn't about them trying to understand my style of management and my way of thinking. It was about me trying to understand their way of thinking and trying to adapt to the way the people were that I was working with, as opposed to me trying to change them to become more white. I had to become more black. And that was a really, that was really my big lesson right from day one. And I realized that the socio-political environment outside of work was having a major, particularly at that time, a huge impact on our business. And our staff were very much more concerned about what was happening outside rather than what was happening inside.
Yeah.
And I learned from people that told us, you can't focus on work if outside you're being harassed every day by the police, and you want, they say they wanted freedom first and work second, essentially. And that was a
Freedom
huge
first, work second. Wow.
yeah. And that was a huge learning experience for me. And ever since then, I've been heavily involved with race relations, throughout the years, and tried to practice and improve, business cultures, taking into account the diversity of our people, and how we can include people and
Right.
empower them. Yeah.
Okay, so fast forward from 76, you get into this beauty industry, you see this white customer, white therapist thing, and I must tell you, as a relatively young black man, going to do your nails or your facials was a very white thing. I mean, the only thing we went to was salons. So so it was a white thing, and I can see that picture, right, of I guess predominantly white women preferring white therapists. When you saw that, and you had come from the business you had come from, what hit you?
It completely freaked me out, Andile. I went to a launch party of a product house, and then I realized, because I just started Sorbet, that all the people there were white. So I went. So, and I'd been working with black people all my life, and this was a completely new experience for me. So I went to one of the managers and I said, where are the black people? Was there like a transport problem? Or,
Is there a strike? Is there a stay away?
A taxi strike or something. You stay at home. Or, I said, where the blacks? And then they told me, they said, no, this is, this is a white industry, and our white consumers prefer to have white people working on them. And I must say that very evening, I took it upon myself to say, no, this is not right. We have to change this. And I must say, looking back at the sorbet journey, it's probably one of the things that I'm most proud of, is that we literally changed the face of the beauty industry.
Absolutely. Absolutely. You got me doing facials and nails, so you've definitely changed the game. Let's talk about the Hatch Institute. What's that all about? What's the plan? How does it work? How do people become a part of it?
It's a coaching and consulting business, largely coaching, and it has a number of different components. It deals with individuals, particularly leaders and entrepreneurs, as well as bigger businesses, and helping people to firstly look at themselves. So the first challenge is a self-development challenge. People need to understand who they are, and they need to understand all of their biases and what made them become what they are today, particularly from a race relations point of view, which I still believe is the number one problem in South Africa, without any doubt whatsoever. Everything in South Africa is somehow touched by race, and if we don't deal with that, we've got very little chance of seeing a prosperous future for everybody. So we talked about people looking at themselves, understanding from a white perspective, understanding white privilege, unconscious biases. How did you become the way you are? Why do you think the way you do? How did you get your book of rules that makes you behave in a certain way? And so we take people back, both black and white, and we get them to understand their paradigms and their unconscious biases. Because if you're not able to transform yourself, it's going to be very difficult to transform anyone else.
Absolutely.
So we start off with the individuals, and then we move into leadership, what we call culture-driven leadership. And that is a style of leadership that helps people to create cultures and lead businesses in such a complex and diverse environment.
But Ian, it takes some maturity for me to even accept I have the problem, particularly from the point of privilege. If I am, and I'm going to paint the typical picture, if I'm a white male boss and I come from the world I come from, the world you came from when you were 22, before you opened Kmart in downtown Joburg, it needs a big level of maturity for me to go, I'm injured, like I'm not okay, like my worldview is not right. Do you have hope that people will develop this and therefore knock on the door of the Hatch Institute?
I think we have reached a point, and I suppose the Black Lives Matter issue has also highlighted everything all over again. But we've reached a point where South Africa cannot move forward unless we start to recognize these things. Because what are we doing otherwise? We are just perpetuating the same mistakes, the same errors, and businesses are starting to realize that if they don't deal with racial polarization in the workplace, they're not going to be able to ever be successful. No one's going to be wanting to serve customers if they don't feel like they've been treated with respect. Yeah. So it comes back to the ability to serve and to be productive. And you can't create a productive environment if the majority of the people do not have a sense of belonging in that environment. They don't feel comfortable, they don't feel respected, they don't feel treated with dignity. So how is that going to impact on your business? Well, the first person that gets impacted is the customer. Because who's going to focus on the customer when you're unhappy in your working environment? And that's really what this is about, is saying if we don't start looking at issues like this, customer service and productivity is always going to be our biggest challenge in South Africa.
So it's a business imperative, basically.
It's a business imperative, absolutely. Absolutely. We need people to feel that they have a sense of belonging and a common purpose, which is to go out there and serve to the very best of your ability. And that's what we did so well, and we tried so hard to do at Sorbet, was to get people to realize that they weren't just coming here for a job. They were coming to touch people's lives and to serve them in a positive way and make them feel good about themselves. And if you could serve well, the money will come. So this is not just a job, it's a privilege actually to be able to serve.
It's the purpose of work, as you say.
The purpose of work is to serve, not to make money. And if you serve well, the money will come, Andy.
I love it. That has stuck with me since I met you. Thank you so much, Ian.